All right, I see the record icon going. So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to this session today. So my name is Ben Kahn. I'm the Acting Director of Academic Technology Services and Innovation at the University of Portland. And yeah, I'm excited to share this topic with you guys today because I think it is going to be a really important one for a lot of us as we're utilizing more asynchronous time in our courses for the fall. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I guess before I do, just a huge thank you to Ryan and Dan and the whole Mountain Moot team for putting this together. I was really bummed that I didn't think I was going to get to participate this year. So it's awesome to connect virtually and to get a chance to see some of you guys. So I'm going to really quickly run through some slides just so conceptually we're all kind of on the same page. Let's just take a few minutes to kind of introduce the topic, and most of the time we're going to spend in the Moodle classroom. I think it's really important for all of you that are instructors or you're helping instructors to get a sense of what the students are actually going to experience activity completion like. So that'll really be the bulk of the time. We'll be kind of going through things, setting things up, demoing things in the actual Moodle environment. But I did a couple months ago come across an article, I think it was in Inside Higher Ed, just kind of conceptualizing asynchronous learning as this task-based model. And I thought that was kind of a useful way to think about it and break it down. So really, what are we asking students to do? At the end of the day, they're like going to do a reading or look at a PowerPoint, watch a video, complete a discussion forum, complete assignments or quizzes, whatever it is. But the author of this, Stephen Mintz, identified the problem, and it sounds simple and straightforward to just go through and do some tasks. But students often end up confused because they're not sure how to navigate through the coursework without the benefit of an in-person instructor or more frequent kind of synchronous contact with their instructor to help keep them kind of on task, right? So that's where completion tracking can be a big help in Moodle. And so, I mean, I've been a Moodle administrator for many years, instructional designer. I've worked with instructors on this, but I also just did 3 years of grad school at a school that did fully online courses through Moodle. And I can attest that when activity completion is done well, it's a huge help for a learner to be able to like log in, kind of check your list and see what you already did, like maybe in a sleepy days at 2 in the morning the night before. Oh, I actually already finished that and checked it off, so I can move on to the next thing. At the same point, if it's just kind of turned on without some thought put into how it's being used, it can actually be more confusing because like everything has a check mark next to it, whether it's something that you're actually supposed to complete or not. Or I've even seen times where activity completion is turned on for something and I'm trying to tick the box off, but it's set up in such a way that I can't even do the thing that I need to do to mark the thing as complete. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. But so as to the benefits, of course, we're helping learners understand their progress and help them to take ownership for their own plans and how they're going to complete their work. Depending on how you set it up as a teacher, it can give you really great visibility into understanding how students are progressing through your content. And where it gets really neat is that you can also kind of do some cool Moodle tricks using things like the restriction sets. So you can actually kind of block off parts of your course or show or hide parts of your course based on students' activity so far and what they've already done or what they haven't done yet. We'll also are going to touch just really briefly on a little bit of gamification, issuing digital badges and things like that as well. So we did have a lot of you fill out this kind of pre-session survey. So I know that there's no one here, at least that filled it out, that has just never heard of activity completion before. But a lot of you said you weren't sure what the different boxes mean and things like that. So this is just sort of a quick view of what students see. Basically, activity completion manifests as these little check boxes that show up next to a lot of your different items in Moodle. What you might not know is that as the instructor, you also have a report in your course that you can look at that gives you a complete breakdown of all the activity completion in the course so far by each learner. And of course, you can export that if you need to do things, manipulate that data in Excel or do any kind of reporting or anything like that. You have access to that data from a report as well. Before you get started, and I saw in other sessions, people were pointing out, yeah, you do have to have this stuff turned on at the site level by your site admin. So if you don't see activity completion at all in your courses, you may need to ask your site admin to turn it on. It is enabled by default, But like when I took over as admin for the Moodle site at UP, I did have to go and turn this on. It had been switched off in the past. Okay. One other quick item just to keep in mind, the checkboxes will appear differently in Moodle depending on your role and also depending on how they've been completed or if they've been completed yet. So we can revisit this cheat sheet later on in this session, but it's just important to note that like when you see it, when you see the check marks there with a little gray check mark in them already, that's because you're a teacher. That's just letting you know that it's enabled for students. Students will see it a little bit of a different way. And this is, again, just sort of a preview. As we're going through, we're going to be looking at how to configure manual completion and also automatic completion. But I want to give you this idea that the automatic completion can be very powerful, and it also presents options to you that are tailored to the specific activity that you're doing. So like this is just a sample of how we would be setting up a forum. And you can see it's offering you different options for what you would consider to be needed to complete a forum in your course, right? So it's very powerful and customizable. We'll be touching on that again as we go through. Also another quick preview, a neat thing about activity completion is that it lets you add everything in your course that you want into the student's timeline feed. So that gives you the capability to kind of give students that rolling feed of the things that they have coming up that are due. And we already have that stuff showing up automatically if we're using assignments with due dates or quizzes with open and close dates. But this lets you add anything into it that you want to put on the student's radar there. You can see in this example, I've put a discussion forum and the student sees that they have 2 posts left to make on that discussion forum. They're seeing this right from their main Moodle dashboard when they log in, not even when they've accessed your course. Again, they have a dashboard view that sort of is giving them that breakdown and that sense of progression through the course. This is from an older version of Moodle. It looks a little bit different now. But again, you're able to see as a student when you log in, okay, I'm actually making progress and filling up this bar as I complete different items in this course. So at this point, I'd say let's go ahead and jump into the Moodle course. If anyone has any questions at this point, if you want to go ahead and add them to the chat, and I think Michael will help me keep an eye on that. Is that correct, Michael?
Yes, I will. So as you get set up, Amy's asking, can you turn the progress completion on or off at the category level?
Like, can you turn, you know how you enable it on the site level? I wonder if you can do it on the category level.
That's a great question, Amy. And I don't think that you can, but one trick that I have used is that if you're importing or copying courses or setting up templates, you can configure activity completion in the template, and it will apply, to wherever it's added to. So that's kind of how I've managed it at that level.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I did not apparently keep my course open, so let me navigate back there.
And then with the progression, is it for the week or for the entire course?
It actually is for the entire course, and that is one of the limitations that I've noticed about it, is that it just makes that calculation based on all the items that have activity completion set up in your course, even if they're like hidden. So sometimes it's not always that weekly checklist. There are some plugins and things like that if you want to really get into the setting up that weekly kind of to-do list, which I am very into doing for students because it does help. But out of the box, no, it's set up for the whole course. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into it here. I hope everyone's able to log in and get that student view so you can kind of follow along with me as we're talking about these things. And another thing I'll do is I'm going to pull up so that I can see. Oops, I have to get used to Ford Sun, not the one I normally use. I'm going to go ahead and open that report. So bump, bump, bump. Help me out. Where are my reports? They are in...
Under user links.
Under user links.
To the right.
View activity report. There we go. Thank you from a non-Ford Sun person. Okay, so this is the activity report.
You want activity completion, which is a
completion.
little higher up on
There
the
we go.
list. There
Thank you very much. So you can see already, I'm able to see as people are going through and checking off some of these things. So I can see who's done the pre-session and who's starting to click on the items in the initial section here. Okay, so in our first topic, this is dedicated to manual examples. This is the most basic way to set it up, and this just means that students can come in, they're gonna have the option to just tick this box when they're ready to consider it complete for themselves. And I do think that the manual completion actually has a lot of merit in terms of empowering students, again, to make that call when they are considering that they've completed what they need to complete. So again, this is just like a link, normal Moodle link. I can open it up, of course, do whatever studying I might need to do, and then I can come and tick that box off as soon as I'm done with it. Similarly, I have a practice quiz set up here. This particular quiz has unlimited attempts. So this might be a scenario where you don't want to automatically complete it for a student because you want them to say, I got an 80% on that one, that's good enough for me, I'm gonna mark it off, right? Or I'm gonna keep going until I get 100% before I mark it off. So again, it gives them that little bit of agency. So I hope you guys are all going through and clicking some of those items. I could see some people are, so that's great to test those out. But we also have the automatic, and that's where things get a little bit more interesting. So we'll probably spend the bulk of our time kind of considering some of those examples today. So in the first one, I've set up a discussion forum, and I went ahead and added an initial post here, but if everyone can go into that discussion forum, let's actually take a minute. If you could just go and make a post and reply to one other post, if you can, let's earmark 2 minutes for this. So we'll come back at 12:15. But yeah, go ahead and just let me know in like one sentence, what do you usually consider complete for a forum? Do you like just one post? Do you require 3 posts? Do you not require any amount of posts at all? Let me know how you set it up, and we'll come back in about 2 minutes. All right, thanks for adding that to that discussion, everyone. I see a lot of different perspectives there. People tend to approach forums in all sorts of different ways. Even if you do have the most popular, like make one original post and reply to 1 or 2 others, sort of method as the most common. But looking at my activity completion report here, I should see that I have the discussion. I can see a few people that have done that, right? They've made 1 post and then 1 reply, and that automatically is getting marked off as complete for them. So if you go, like if you click on your name in the upper right-hand corner and then dashboard, and you're looking at your course overview and have this course in your course overview, you should see that you're starting to fill up this bar as you mark some of these items as complete. So for the next example, I have a practice quiz. It's actually the same practice quiz as from the manual completion section. But in this case, I have it set to mark complete once you've actually achieved a passing grade in the course, which is a little bit different of a way, or achieved a passing grade in the quiz rather, which is a little bit of a different way to set it up. So in this case, you'll be able to go and take this quiz. I can see there's already been 13 people to answer it so far. It just has one question. I will give you a hint. It is actually true. And as soon as you answer that question and get a 100%, it will mark that you've completed that particular quiz. So you can see how something like that could be a really powerful way to measure if students are able to demonstrate understanding or competency to a satisfactory level on something like a quiz. And then we'll see later on how you can put other access to other parts of the course behind that. I see a question from Trisha. As a student, you can go to see your progress on the course dashboard. So not every Moodle installation really uses the dashboard. It'll depend on what version you're using and also how your admin has set up where you go after you first log in. But we find at a higher ed institution where students have a lot of different classes each semester, the dashboard has been a great way to help feed them some personalized information right when they log in. And let them, just give them those kind of clues about here's upcoming due dates, here's the courses that you have going on right now. All right, so I also have a assignment set up here as well. I'm not sure if anyone's gotten into that one. Let's have a quick look. Let's see, I have 3 submissions. So I'm gonna go ahead and grade some of these submissions. Let's see if I can filter this. Requires grading. There we go. And then I'm going to turn my quick grading on. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and assign a couple of grades. I'll just give an 80, a 90, and a 100, not based on the actual quality of your submissions whatsoever, but just showing that I've actually set that one up so that it's not marked complete until I actually give that grade. So again, just showing that there's all sorts of different options for how you set up the automatic completion criteria. For assignments, there's other options as well. So if I want to have the assignment automatically marked complete when a student just first does the upload or when they click the submit button, I can do that too. Okay, so I think we've kind of covered the concepts and just kind of given the overview of like what activity completion actually looks like or how it operates at a basic level. But I do want to know if everyone wants to practice actually setting one up. So we have this choice activity here. Again, I'm in the Moodle activity completion Moodle course. Under this automatic by criteria examples section, there's this choice activity that says, let's set one up. So if everyone just take 1 minute if you haven't voted on this yet, and we should see what people are wanting to try setting up. So I'm going to give until 12:21 for everyone to go in and make a vote there if you haven't already. Oh, things are getting interesting. I thought discussion forum had it wrapped up, but we have other people who want to look at quizzes, maybe assignments. If you're the other person, maybe pop that in the chat, what your idea is. All right, we have quite a few responses. I feel like we need some like dramatic music or something.
It's funny. I was gonna. I withheld jumping in and saying I should have had a plan for that because I didn't want to mess with your mojo. But
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna call it here. Let's check the final results. Drum roll, please. And we have discussion forum, which is a great example. So we'll go ahead and work with that one. I'm going to come back to the main course here. Before I do that, I just want to point out this PDF that I've added into the course. If you want to see what all of the different possibilities are for the automatic completion, this is kind of your go-to resource. So it's going to just give you a quick kind of chart view of like what you can and can't set up for automatic completion based on the type of activity.
That's very cool.
Yeah, that was a great resource. So we, in our case, are going to do a discussion forum. So I'm going to turn my editing on. I'll go ahead and add it under the automatic. We have our activity chooser here, the new one for 3.9, which is very neat. And forum, there it is. Okay, so I'm going to call this forum with auto magical completion. Spelling doesn't count at the Moodle boot. Okay, and what we're going to do is I'll skip all the other setup stuff, but we'll go straight to activity completion. So right now it's set to manual just because that was the default in my course. So if I leave it like this and click save and display, it's going to appear as a student's with the check mark that they themselves can check or uncheck however they want. But we are more interested for this part in setting up the automatic. So we're going to choose the option that says show activity as complete when conditions are met. And basically everything in Moodle, like no matter what it is going to have these three options available to you. What's going to be different is what is available to you once you choose show activity as complete when conditions are met, because the ways that people can interact with the different things in Moodle, the conditions that they can meet are going to vary depending on what the type of activity is. Okay, so require view, that's pretty standard, but we'll leave that checked. But these are kind of inclusive, so the more of these conditions that we require, the student will have to meet all of them before the activity is marked complete. So we're going to just want to set those up according to how we want to do it. So I think this is probably new in Moodle 3.9 that you can require a grade on a discussion forum, because the whole forum grading at least is brand new and I haven't really played with it yet. But I typically don't require a grade on the discussion forum because that can be delayed a little bit past the time when the students are actually making their posts and moving on to the next topic. So I typically don't do that one. But here you can see that we have the options that we probably do care about, which is require posts, discussions, or replies. And so for what the terminology that they're using here, I would say a post or a reply and a discussion both count as a post, if that makes sense. So if you just want a student to go in and make some amount of contributions to the forum, and you don't care whether they're making their own original thread or a reply thread, that you don't want to distinguish between those, you can just set this to say, like, I just want you to participate 3 times. As soon as they participate 3 times, it's marked complete. I think most instructors like to set it up a little bit differently, because usually you want a student to be creating at least one of their own discussions and then maybe posting replies to 1 or 2 other people. And so it's pretty simple to just go ahead and choose those options and set it up that way. The last thing I'll call out is this expect completed on. And what this can be helpful for, again, is showing that upcoming due date in the timeline. So if there's anywhere in your Moodle course that's showing due dates that are coming up, like we kind of showed on the dashboard. Do we have that on the dashboard? We might not actually have that on the Moodle dashboard, but on an out-of-the-box Moodle install or at your school, typically there's going to be a block called timeline on the dashboard that I demonstrated in those slides. That's going to show, here's your upcoming due dates. And if we want the forum to appear in there, we can just make sure to include this expect completed on. So I'll go ahead and just do a save and return to course, because really that's all there is to it. It's actually pretty simple to set up. It's kind of the good news. So even though there are sort of a variety of options for you to choose from, and you might have to get a feel for it as you kind of configure the activities that you like to use and the way that you like to use them, it's easy to go in and kind of play with those settings and see how they work.
So we do have a couple questions, and
Yeah.
I may have missed some, but a person was asking, how would the student know what is required?
How would the student know what is required?
Yeah, so so your forum example that I need to make 1 post and 2 replies.
You would have to tell them what you want them to do. So that is still a part of teaching asynchronously or at a distance, right? So just trying to model that, what I did in the example that we already worked on, and I'm not sure if I did a good enough job or not of making it really clear, but I did include that make one original post and one reply to an existing post to complete the forum. So I would really encourage everyone to make that a practice when you're setting up asynchronous or online activities. Be really clear about what the expectations are if you are grading, what the requirements are or the criteria that you're going to be grading on, and this all goes kind of along with that general expectation.
And then there seem to be some questions about the timing, and if you could talk maybe a little bit about, like, after a student completes something, how long does it take for the student to see it, and is it tied into the cron job or?
Yes, that's a good question. It is tied into the cron job. It's pretty fast, but it does depend on how your admin has set up the cron job and the scheduled tasks. So at my school, I'm not sure how often the scheduled tasks run. It must be like once every 5 minutes at
I
the
think 5 is
longest.
right. Yep.
Yeah, and then I have the cron job set up to run once every minute, which is
Mhm.
the recommended time from Moodle. So in the longest case scenario, if a student maybe finishes something at 11:56 or something like that, they should see it at noon. But there will be some variation there depending on the Moodle setup. That's a good point.
And so the one to emphasize one of the things that Ben said, do check with your admin to make sure they're running the cron job every minute. That didn't used to be the recommendation, but it is.
Sure.
It is now.
Yeah, when I took over admin for our Moodle a couple of years ago, I think we had it set at like 15 minutes or something like that. And there were just all sorts of times when it was like you would do something and then wait around for something to happen. So setting the cron job to 1 minute made a lot of these backend processes, or these things that depend on backend processes, a little bit more intuitive, because you do something and then you kind of see the result you're expecting much sooner afterwards. All right, so if you're gonna get serious about using activity completion, this next part is, I think, crucial so that you don't drive yourself bonkers trying to actually manage this stuff. And I find that most people don't really know about these settings, so this is really a good thing for us to cover. So as the instructor, you're gonna have access under the course completion settings. There's 2 more tabs. One is called default activity completion, and one is called bulk edit activity completion. So just to go over what those are going to allow us to do, and then we'll jump into a quick demo of how to do it. The default activity completion allows you to select one or more course activities or resources. So you can choose any of the course activities or resources and set their defaults to the way you want them to work. So that can be really important if you're building that course out, and you always want your discussion forums, your quizzes to work a certain way with activity completion, whether that's manual or a certain automatic criteria that you want to set up. You can set it as the default, so every time you make a new forum activity or a new quiz or whatever it is, you don't have to always be reminding yourself to go and fiddle with the settings, and you don't end up with some forums that are set up one way and some forums that don't have activity completion turned on at all, or they're set up a different way. So it can really help you with consistency. The caveat there is, note that that only applies to new items that you create after you set those defaults. So I can't go and change all the default settings and then assume I'm done if I already have a bunch of forums and quizzes in my course. But that's where the other screen helps, the bulk edit activity completion, because that allows us to kind of go through and, again, just do that bulk edit that we might need to do if we already have a bunch of items in the course. So I'm again going to come up here, access my settings menu, and under my user links and / I have course completion. Oh, wrong. Bit by the / again. Let me see here. Sorry, I know / is an excellent theme. I'm just really not used to it. So hang on just a second. Okay, so probably under course settings, we have edit course completion settings. That's probably what I want. Yes, found it. Okay. So we do have the course completion settings that we can look at, and actually the activity completion can be a cool way to let students mark something as complete, especially if they need to do that to then unlock other courses or things like that. But in most kind of university settings or learning settings, it's not typically too important. So let's go look at the default activity completion. You can see right now I have like basically everything set to manual by default, which is kind of the way that I typically like to set it up, and then tweak from there. But you can see I already went through, and things that, in my opinion, just makes no sense to have a tick box next to them, already turned it off. So I went and turned off like folders, and I think like labels and certificates, things where it's like, I don't really need a completion next to that, and I already know that going in. But of course, we can make some more edits as well. So say that I always want, let's go look through some things. I always want like maybe pages and URLs. I always want those to automatically complete when you click on them and look at the content, just as an example. So I've selected those two things, and then I'm going to click the edit. Okay, and then I'm going to set the completion tracking in this case as show activity is complete when conditions are met. And you can see the conditions that are available to me are going to depend on which activities I've chosen to make the edit to. So the only one that is common to both pages and URLs is that student must view this activity to complete it. If you have more complex sets of options that are available to whatever it is that you've selected, you'll have more options available on the screen. But for now, I'll just choose this as student must view this activity to complete it, do save changes. Now every time I add a new page or URL into my course, it's going to have those settings. And then the other one, of course, is that bulk edit. It works in a really similar way. So I just would go through, I could choose everything in the course at once, or just specific things. So like maybe I'm thinking, the slides for the session, and maybe some of these like extra credit sort of things that you probably can't see yet. So don't try to look for them yet. Those I don't need the activity completion turned on. So I've ticked 3 or 4 things. I'm going to edit all of those at the same time and just turn them to do not indicate activity completion. And you can see I get this list down here of what I'm changing as I'm changing it. So that's just one of these time management things that can just be a huge time saver. I do hate when folks who maybe need to be doing this kind of work, but they're not aware of some of these menus. They come to me and they're like, Moodle, sucks because I had to go into every activity and make all these changes, and I spent an hour doing it. So just want to make sure that everyone's aware of some of those tools that can create those efficiencies for us. Okay, should we take a quick pause for questions? Anything going on in the chat?
Yeah, so there was some, just I think mostly it seems like side stuff.
Great. Okay, well, we're moving along here. So why don't we go ahead, and I'm going to impersonate a student so I don't spoil things for everyone here with my screen. So talking about some of the gamification and some of the other cool things that we can do as a bonus with activity completion. I think we covered some of these in the slides, so I won't really go through them again. But this is just an example of how you can do things like issue digital badges based on activity completion. So if you come down to this gamification and other fun stuff section, you'll find here I set up just a simple text label in Moodle. And if you click it, you should find, again, depending on the cron and those things, that you get issued a badge actually just for clicking the box. So if you've done that and you come and check out your latest badges block along the right-hand side of the course, or if you click into the menu on the left-hand side of the course and then click on badges, you can see that there's actually are a couple of badges set up in the course, and you can automatically issue them, which is a very cool way to do it. So I'm going to return back to my normal role here. I'll come over and I can see actually, I can get a nice report. I can see 22 people went ahead and clicked that to earn that badge. And then also I set up a badge that was tied to completing that initial discussion forum as well. I can see 22 people got that badge as sort of a fun thing as well. So that's just something you can incorporate into your course to do some kind of gamification, recognition, motivation to help with getting students through some of your content. You should also get a email letting you know about the badge in case it wasn't apparent to you that you earned it. And if you go into your Moodle profile, again, by just clicking on your name and going to profile, I believe it lists the badges that you've earned here. So anyone else that's looking at your profile on Moodle will be able to see kind of the cool badges that you earned as you went through different learning content. Okay, so I set up another kind of example here under the gamification and fun stuff. So you should see this label down at the bottom if you haven't done both of the quizzes. And I don't want to make everyone go through and actually do all the quizzes because I know that this takes a few minutes to complete. But what I've done here is I've set up some of those conditional restrictions on some of the content here. So I have this label here that just says, hey, make sure that you finish all the quizzes in the course to reveal a neat surprise. But I've used the activity completion in conjunction with the, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I'll use the activity completion in conjunction with the restrictions available for each Moodle item to only show this in the case that you have not already completed the quizzes. So as soon as you have completed the quizzes, this little message goes away. And in this case, I just replaced it with the fun, DJ pizza space cat kind of thing. But again, you can imagine that you could set up automatic access to extra resources or to like extra credit items or just fun messages like this. So a favorite trick of mine is putting something like this near the beginning of the course. And maybe it's a message that says like, hey, students, before you proceed into this, please make sure that you read the syllabus or turn in the authorization form or whatever it is that you're going to have to follow up with a bunch of students to make sure that everyone gets completed. You can have like a big banner right at the top of the course reminding them to do that, but then once they've done it, that banner can go away and maybe it can be replaced with access to something else that they need instead. So that's just sort of a cool way to extend activity completion. Another person that I was chatting with brought up a really good idea is if you're doing differentiation for students and letting them actually demonstrate competencies in different ways or just pursue different like activities as part of their learning path, you can set up the activity completion and that would give you just like a really great breakdown on that report of which ones are actually getting used, which ones aren't getting used. You have really solid numbers that you could kind of compare over time on that and sort of hone your offerings based on that. So there's one more example of that. So I just kind of did it with like a disclaimer. So there are some more plugins. I decided for this session to kind of keep it simple and not ask Ryan to install a bunch of plugins for me. But will go ahead and put the link to some of those if you want to check them out that can enhance the activity completion a little bit more on your site if it's something that you want to. And I won't really go into these, but you can see there's like the level up gamification plugin if you want to be awarding points and things like that. The checklist activity, I think, is the one you'd want to check out if you really want to have that every week or every module has its checklist that students have to go through and they can get that kind of modular breakdown of their activity completion. And then the completion progress block is just another way to help visualize activity completion. Okay, so that is sort of the end of my demo content. I'd be more than happy to open for questions, additional conversations, or thoughts at this point. If anybody wants to, if you go in Zoom to the participants area, like if you just click where it says participants and bring that box up, you can like raise your hand if you want to, just because we have quite a few people in here, I don't want everyone to unmute themselves at once, but if anyone wants to raise your hand or unmute yourself to ask a question, that would be fine, or you can use the chat. I did see Jessica brought up sort of a good point, that is communicating this to students. So if I'm working with a group in a course that isn't really familiar with this, I do like to usually put in the syllabus or in the about this course just a little note about how I'm using activity completion. So if I have it set up so that students are checking their own stuff off, I'll put a note in there that basically just says, we've set up the, the activities in the course to have a checkbox that you can kind of use as your own to-do list to keep track of your progress. Or if I'm using the automatic activity completion, I would kind of make a note of that as well. Moodle does explain it a little bit. You should see you have your progress link up here. So if you can even like copy this text and put it into your about the course information. Can you use course completion in completing a program or a series of courses? So we didn't really look at that in this, but yes, you definitely can. So there might be some other plugins that you would need to bring into the mix depending on how you want to use it. And if anyone else has more experience with that, feel free to unmute yourself and add your perspective. But I know there are things like the subcourse plugin that might be a help with that. And I'm sure there are others as well that can basically do automatic enrollment based on course completion and things like that. Yeah, you got it.
Okay, so my question is for this activity completion, do you think it's better just to have one type throughout the entire course, or maybe switch it up depending on what the activity is or what you're asking them to do? Because my fear with all of this is that if I do a little bit of everything, then it's just going to confuse students, or what did I click on? I'm not sure, especially if it's like, depending on the course, if it's like, okay, you can do it as this many times, maybe you wanted to do it more or something like that. I just wanted to see if you had any insight on that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it sort of depends, again, on how you're designing the course and where your priorities lie. Again, I think that the manual is better for giving students that agency. And the automatic is probably better if you're really interested in getting that data out. So I've focused on the automatic definitely for things like where I've had to set up, compulsory like professional development training for staff and things like that, where you really need to do reporting on that data. But if you're working with like a small, small course of, for a writing class or something like that, and you have a manageable number of students, maybe you're more interested in setting up just some of the manual completion. And maybe you're not even as interested in using the completion for the assignments and things like that as you are for all the different readings and resources that they might just want to keep track of if they've utilized or not. But either way, I think communication, again, is sort of the key to helping students make use of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
I guess I'm vocally raising my hand because I forgot to click the button.
That's okay.
I just wanted I wanted to add that just yesterday, anecdotally, I got a very, very, very distressed message from one of my faculty completing professional development, because no matter what she did with this assignment, it wouldn't show the checkbox. And that was because the checkbox was manual. And on her screen and in our theme, it's really hard. You have to really look to see whether it's a dotted box or a solid box. So explaining, if you've done something and it doesn't look like it might just be that you get to check that. You've looked at it and you can check it and say you've looked at it. But it was very, very stressful that she didn't have those instructions. So.
Yeah, and I've taken courses where the activity completion was, I think, set up for it was set to complete upon getting a grade, kind of like how I set the assignment up in this example. But then it wasn't something that actually ever got graded, so it just kind of sat there.
You're just gonna.
So yeah, it can take some. You have to put a little bit of extra thought and care into how you're setting it up and to consistency. Like I would say, you might use both types across the course, but I would probably never say like you want some of your quizzes to be manual and some to be automatic. Someone said, can you give with a badge with manual completion? And definitely, yeah, that's how we actually set up that badge that says click happy. So all you had to do was click on the activity checkbox to indicate that you were manually completing it, and that's how that badge was issued. And then you can contrast that one with the badge for the forum, where that was set up with automatic completion. When you made one original post and then replied to one other post, it automatically awarded the badge for that as well. Yeah, of course. Okay, so we're coming up, I think, at the end of time. I want to give people a break in between sessions, of course. So I think we can end it here unless there's any other questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and participating. This was so fun to be able to do virtually. I was so happy with Ryan and everyone for putting this together. So feel free. I think we have my contact info on here, but feel free to just send me a message through the Mood site if you want. There's that little message activity or message capability up here with the chat box. Feel free to send me a message, or you can email me, kahn@up.edu. Happy to chat more on this stuff.
And thank you again, Ben. That was that was a great presentation. And
yeah, thanks for helping moderate.
You bet. And then the recordings will be posted shortly. Thank you again, everyone, for participating.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.